Hey, welcome back, everybody. So let's go ahead and take a look at the watch list, which is going to be for Monday, April 28th. Now, mind you, we only have a couple of days left in the month of April. So, up until last week, April was turning out to be one of the worst performing months over the last 5 years. And it has literally done an about face and rebounded back up to just above the 50% fib level for both SPY and QQQ. And I'm going to show that to you on the chart. So this is going to kind of be a point of decision as to, is the market able to climb higher, or has it just had a really significant bounce and now we are going to turn around and head lower? Good news is we don't have any news scheduled for Monday other than what could come out of the administration, what could get tweeted, or what Fed governor might just pop up and say something. So while we don't have news that's technically going to drop, obviously always being cognizant of the market volatility and what comes our way from a news flow event will be absolutely critical. Now, next week we have a tremendous amount of news flow that we are going to want to pay attention to. So we're going to have a lot of trade imbalance, retail inventories, wholesale inventories coming in on Tuesday morning before the market opens. So what we're going to want to see is, are companies doing actually pull through of buying before the tariffs actually went in place? So we're seeing that actually in the auto sector where people are running out and buying cars. So while they had maybe planned on buying one in the summer or the fall, they're like, nope, don't want to risk it. I'm going to go buy right now. So I would say that retail sales has been very strong, has been purchasing, but is that just a pull forward before the tariffs actually went in place? So we'll get a better perspective of that. We had some consumer confidence numbers last week, and they did not come in well. No surprise there. I don't think these are going to be any better on Tuesday. So let's just be aware while the market is open. Consumer confidence job openings. Let's just see how that plays out. I definitely would not want to be in a trade. On Wednesday, we have a lot more regarding unemployment, GDP. So is the GDP of the country coming in significantly lower than what's projected? Now, clearly, tariffs are going to have a huge impact on that, right? It is going to slow down the U.S. economy significantly, because we're not going to be importing, we're probably not going to be doing much exporting, and therefore you will have an overall contraction perspective. The other thing we're going to want to watch is consumer spending. So are consumers still spending? Now, I just said a second ago that they are spending, but is that a spend pull forward? And then could we see that start to slow? Now, we are also in the midst of first quarter company earnings, which are coming in strong, and they're actually beating. Other than Tesla. Tesla missed horrifically and the stock still ran up 20%. And we're going to take a look at that one because I think there's still more upside to go there. But as far as Google came in, Google's results were really solid. This upcoming week, we're going to have way more tech announcements. So we're going to want to be aware and cognizant of those. I will post those in the Discord channel. So make sure that you check and know who's reporting what before the bell as well as after the bell. So companies like Apple, Google, Meta, Microsoft, NVDA, we're going to want to pay attention to what not only they report, but more importantly, what do they say? So many of you are asking, Bill, I want to talk about swing trades. What do you think about swinging, Apple or Amazon or Google or something into earnings? So while earnings could be really good and they can beat on the top and the bottom line, if they just give a very neutral to negative future outlook and pull guidance, the street is not going to like that, right? So airlines were beating on the quarterly numbers, but then future guidance, they're just saying, don't know. We can't even forecast this, right? We can tell you what's happening right now, but we're not going to tell you what's going to happen going forward. And when you don't get to go forward, because remember, the stock market is forward looking. It's not rear view looking. So it is thinking about the future and where are we going. So we're going to want to watch inflation numbers, your PCE, the index, the year over year, the core, as well as we know pending home sales have been horrific. So home sales are now back to 2009, 2010 financial crisis lows. Nobody is buying and selling homes right now. First off, mortgage rates are well above 7%. 2, home prices are still exorbitantly high. And 3, people are worried about the economy. They're worried about their job. They're worried about tariffs. They're worried about a whole bunch of things. So when there is fear in the market, people will stay complacent. Okay? Thursday, we have initial jobless claims, so we'll keep an eye on that. We have our manufacturing, construction spending, and auto sales. Again, should be some real telltale numbers to see, are these overly strong? Are they in line? Or are they weak? And then how does the market digest the news? Let the news drop. Okay, there's no sense in being in a trade before a news drop. I made that mistake on Friday. It was working in my favor. I actually doubled down on a trade, and then it just didn't go. And it didn't go because I had 10 minutes until the news event, and until the news drops, no one is going to be willing to take me out of my call or my put trade. So therefore, theta will start to eat that away. So keep that in mind, that if you're within 15 minutes and you can't get off a quick scalp, just don't take a trade. And then Friday, payroll numbers, unemployment rate, hourly wages, and factory orders. So big week with news. Make sure that you're not in a trade when news drops, and don't try to predict it, right? Just let it come out and then we'll respond from there. So back to what I was saying earlier, we've retraced about 50% of the drop. So from the market top to the most recent market bottom, we are just recovering now in SPY the 50% fib, which is at 546.87. Right now we're at about 550. So we are now just above the 50, but we're below the 618, which is 562.50. We will want to see, depending upon what the news flow is do they reject this back lower to go higher? Or does the market just say, well, it's about as good as it's going to get. I got 50% of my losses back, so therefore I'm out. Now, we do have a daily gap which has been being eaten into over the last couple of days, right? So this gap has been shrinking, but it still exists. So we have a daily gap that will still fill to the upside. We don't have a lot of sellers here on whether it's a 1 hour, 2 hour, 4 hour time frame, right? So it could be potential upside all the way up here to that 618 fib. So I would keep an eye on that. When I take a look at QQQ, kind of a similar story, right? Now Q's has been much stronger than SPY, but it also came further down on a trajectory basis from a percentage. So pivot high at the all-time high to the pivot low, we are just recovering the 50% fib. Now, mind you, we are going to have some resistance before we even get to the 618, which we did not have with SPY. But I think if we can get above this level of 473, you could definitely take some long calls to 478. We pass that, 481, then 483, we're going to hit some resistance. And then again, this is going to be the ultimate test. Can they get above the 618? If they can't get above 618, then we should see the market start to trend lower. Let's take a look at a couple of the individual names. Tesla, like I said, earnings were just disastrous. They just missed everywhere. I mean, surprise to the downside by 34% on earnings, 10% down on revenue. I mean, they just missed across the board, yet the stock rallied exponentially. So that was on the news flow that Elon was going to spend maybe only 1 or 2 days a week with Doge and then would be back to focus in on Tesla. And then he came out, which is interesting, saying that Robotaxi project is on track for a June launch. Now, mind you, if you listened to last quarter, he said it was on hold and there was no foreseeable date in the future when it would launch. Kind of interesting after he loses half of his net worth, something that was on hold where he hasn't been paying attention to it is now back active and it's going to launch literally in 60 days. So I definitely think that they could probably run this thing all the way up to $300 a share. So let's watch and see if they hold the 283.29. Ideally, I'd love to get a pullback to 273 or 262. Don't know you're going to get it. I don't want to be shorting this thing, right? I mean, just makes no sense. It now has relative strength to the upside, and we are clearing these prior pivots that were a real challenge, okay? So be a little bit patient on that one. Apple in the news is moving all of its production for iPhones in the U.S. From China to India. So again, that's going to be another positive catalyst. I want to see us pull back to 206.59. I don't like buying between levels. I think you guys already know that. I would rather not chase. I would rather say I want a better entry price. Now, mind you, this is also still holding a trend line. Okay, so as long as the trend line doesn't break, and if we could at least come to the trend line, about 207.59, I'd be okay with you going long and taking some calls. But ideally, I'd love to get them at 206.59. Beggars can't be choosers, but all in all, on a 1 hour time frame, this trend is holding pretty good, and we're making higher highs, right? High, this is higher, this is higher, this is higher, right? We're going to run into a little bit of resistance here at 210, but I definitely think if we could get past that, we're going to go for the gap fill because we only have 30 minutes of supply above us. Let's go ahead and take a look at Amazon. Amazon, another interesting one, right? Because tariffs impact so much of their business because everything that's sold on Amazon is predominantly made in China. So this thing took a nice pop higher all the way to 194, sold back down to 166, and now we are gaining momentum. Very same thing as what we have with Apple, right? We want to buy this at a bounce of 188. I don't want to be chasing this, and we also have a lot more overhead supply in Amazon than what we do with Apple. So let's just kind of watch this one, see how this plays out. Again, we'll do the exact same thing because we're on a 1 hour time frame. I think as long as we could hold this trend line here, and we'll see how it plays out tomorrow morning, could be some more gas in the tank for Amazon, but not as much. We're already at 189.20. Right? And we saw a pivot high of 190, 118. The pivot high back here was 194. So it's not like we're talking about going to 200, 220, 240. And there's just a ton of resistance up top. So keep that on your radar. Let's take a look at Google. Google, another interesting one. We took a trade on Google right out of the gate on Friday that went up 50%. It was just all about your entry. But this one was up 6% after hours, and they essentially sold it all the way off all day in the pre-market and then also on Friday, right? I mean, how crazy is that? They run it up on great earnings. Advertising revenue is what was really strong coming out of YouTube. So I want to see, can we hold this level of 161.61? Right now it closed and we're sitting at 160.170 in the after hours. But if it does, definitely possibly for a pop higher to the upside. If not, I don't know that I necessarily want to short it, especially if tech is strong. I would rather wait for it to dip below and then maybe say, okay, well, let's take a look at this on a short interim basis. If we get down here to 160.104, I mean, now we're splitting hairs, right? 160.104, 161.61, 161.70. You're better off just to say, I want to see the level hold. If not, wait for it to come down here to 159, which is where you got that massive breakout to the upside. Now, conversely, when Google moved up because of ad revenue, guess what else was moving up? Meta, okay? Huge bounce off this 481 level down here. Again, this is why levels are so important, you guys. If you could just get the leveling right, my gosh, total game changer. Now, we need to get above 550, 150, and we really need to get above this 1 day supply here in order to go higher. So this is what I'd be looking at is, can we get above 557.42? I don't really have a buy area that I like other than really this 526. I don't want to be buying on a 30-minute. I don't want to be buying on a 45-minute. We probably here, let's just do a quick fib. Do we see anything? Possibly a reject. If they hold this 50,618, it could go higher, but if not, I'd definitely be looking for it to come lower, and then I'd like to take a trade accordingly. So let's leave the fib on there, and we'll watch that one as well. Conversely, one that I'm watching to take a sizable position in is going to be Snap. So this one I think is really intriguing because it has oscillated. And if you were to look at this on a daily basis, right, we are at a huge support level. It's held once, twice. We are now above that support level. And then we can take this even higher up to from 834 to 912, 950, $10, $10.50, almost every 50 cents, right? But look at this amazing range that this was trading in the past before they broke it to the downside. Now, I think this one also has tremendous potential to the upside. Look at this here, how we have literally been able to hold this 835 level to go long. This one potentially, I think, has a ton of earnings power that's in it, but we'll see come on the 29th, right? So on Tuesday. So this one, I'm going to take a call trade for earnings to at least, I'll price it out on Monday and then I'll put it in the Discord channel where I actually buy at. But this is one that I think the risk to reward is really good. Again, I don't really like ever playing earnings, but they threw out the baby with the bathwater on all of this. And Google gives me confidence to say, we're pretty darn good with how their revenue came in play for advertising. Now, the question is, was it a pull forward, right? But we got a really good baseline, guys, to work off of to at least probably go into some $9 calls. So again, I will post that in the Discord when I take that trade. NVDA, another monstrosity, break back above, breaking higher, right? So I want to see, is this able to continue? We got a really nice, strong double price level here of 109.07. Again, don't want to be buying between levels. So if we could get to 109, definitely, I think that's a catalyst for some more room to the upside. We really don't have anything. Let me just look on this interim, what they did with these fibs here. They kind of pushed it higher and then they rejected it lower and they can't get back above the 50. So I don't like that. But I'm going to want to watch this one also on Monday morning. We've also been playing AMD, some great success in AMD off my price levels. I mean, these things were just pure money. Again, we're in demand. I have a price level right above of 96.97, which we failed in Friday in the middle of the day, right? And then pushed lower. But what a huge run that was. I think some of you took some AMD calls. I mean, those things went up 300%. What a phenomenal, phenomenal trade. So let's keep an eye on this one. My next price level above it is at 99, but you're going to see we're going to head quite into a bit of resistance. We get above 100, then I really think this thing can fly to 101, 103, 105, and dramatically move up from there. Okay? I want to take a look at some of the banks. So that's another one that's been getting a lot of good news recently, that sector rotation, that it could be a good place to somewhat hide. Now, mind you, there was a gap on JP Morgan Chase, which filled the gap on Friday. So a lot of strength there. So I want to see this hold 242, but if the banks get weak for whatever reason, this would be a good short trade. Okay. Let's also look at Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo, same exact thing. Had a gap here. It closed the gap. We now have relative strength on Wells up to 71.42. So if the banks are going to show some strength, I really like this Wells at 69.36 to play that one for a bounce. Let's take a look at Bank of America. Again, I'm sticking with the money center banks. That's where the momentum is, not in the regional banks. Stay away from the U.S. banks, the PNCs, the M&Ts. Just steer clear of all of those. It makes no sense. Bank of America, another great probability to the upside. Again, I'd like to get it to 39.18. It's only 50 cents lower, and play that for a gap fill all the way up to 41 bucks. So again, the banks are going to move a bit slower, but I definitely want to keep an eye on these. And then lastly, a Citi. You've known that I've traded Citi multiple times, and this one is just, for me, the one that just keeps paying over and over again. Again, it was at 80 bucks. They got it all the way down to 60. I'd love to see a bounce here at 67, and we have a gap fill. So I'm more interested in the stocks that have gap fills because they actually act as magnets. And then finally, many of you are always asking about Bitcoin. Well, instead of trading the Bitcoin ETF, I would just trade something like a Robinhood or a MicroStrategy, where you can see it's had a phenomenal run to the upside. We're kind of hitting some resistance here at 50, but if I were to go back and just take a look at where this was at 65, kind of at an all-time high, we're now at a pivot. So if we can get above this $50, we can definitely run to 55 and then head a bit higher. Or think about playing coin. Coinbase, another great breakout trade. We are back just above this prior channel where it was consolidating, broke lower, they got it back up, broke lower, couldn't hold it, we came down, pivot, back, holding. Now we are back above 207, so I would definitely consider playing some 220 calls. I am more probably interested this week in playing the individual names than playing the ETFs, but we will see how this comes out. But at the end of the day, you have to be watching Confluence, SPY with QQQ, with the futures, with volatility. I mean, this is where it was crazy land back here when we were trading in these 50s. The VIX has now dropped to 24. We do have a gap below that it could possibly seek to fill that will take us down here, right? So we can say that we do have a gap. And let me line that up. So the bottom of the gap is going to be this candle wick high, which is going to be a 2366. So let's make sure that we got that right. 2366, I was off by a penny. There we go. We will go ahead and hold that in our charts, right? So we're going to want to watch. If it gets below my level, which is awesome, right? 2480, and we go for the bottom of this gap fill and we keep falling, these ETFs are going to keep ripping higher. So again, what I will have here is I will have SPY, here I have QQQ, here I have the VIX. When I'm watching the futures, here again, same thing. I have ES, I have NQ, I have the VIX. So I'm watching the futures, I'm watching Confluence while I am trading the individual names, whether it be an Apple, an Amazon, an Alphabet, a Microsoft, a Tesla, however you want to think about it. But with that, I hope this was very helpful to you. And if I can ever be of assistance, just let me know. With that, everybody, have a fantastic week. And I will see you all tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. for live trading. Talk to you soon.